When our Minister of Basic Education Angie Motshekga announced on Friday that matric candidates across the country will have to rewrite their physical science and mathematics paper 2 exams. Now, this comes after the papers were leaked in November. The rewrite dates have been moved to the 15th of December for mathematics paper 2 and the 17th of December for physical science paper 2. But what does this mean for learners who have to deal with the anxiety of rewriting? On that note, we are joined by Educational Psychologist Vanessa Barnes to find out what the effects this announcement could have on the learners as well as their parents. Vanessa, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. I mean, the reality has been set. We obviously heard from the minister yesterday that the two papers will be rewritten. So when we look at the tumultuous year that matriculants alone have had during 2019, as they've also had to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, what are the psychological effects of learners at this point as they head into rewriting both exams?
Morning. I would imagine that these learners are experiencing a very wide range of emotions at this point in time, from anxiety, I'm sure, possibly through to anger, and then I think for a very select few, possibly even a little bit of relief or happiness.
Mm. And so when we look at the emotions that are coming through and the different coping mechanisms that they will have to perhaps utilize as they navigate this unprecedented time and this new normal as well, how does this perhaps also influence performance?
Absolutely. So I would imagine that many of these learners are feeling very anxious. I mean,
Mm.
their recall is not as fresh now as it would have been when they wrote the first time around. There was this emotional buildup of 12 years towards these final exams, and they've since let go of that because they've written. And now I would imagine they're feeling extremely anxious and that there's a degree of panic setting in. And what we do know is that anxiety affects my ability to recall and to remember information. So that will impact on my performance in these exams.
And then when we look at the entire value chain, I mean, across the education system that has been affected, we also can't ignore the fact that parents have also been roped into this. So in terms of offering support and also perhaps some of the more financial constraints that they'll have to pick up as a result, how do these factor in?
Yeah, there's huge implications for this. I mean, if children don't perform as well as they do this time around, then there are financial implications potentially for those who would possibly normally have gotten through on a bursary. That may not happen. So I would imagine there's anxiety around that for the parents as well. But I think the important thing for parents and for guardians is just to reinforce in their children that they've got this, they've done this work already, you know, um, to try and view it as the second time around is not going to be as scary because you now know what to expect, just to try and alleviate that anxiety.
You've actually touched on a point that I wanted to focus on. I mean, as we navigate change and also have to face this reality as an educational psychologist, what are some of the coping mechanisms rather that are available to matriculants at this point in time?
So I think the big thing for me at this point in time would be as parents, as teachers, as friends, as family members, we are the biggest resource that these children have got at this point in time. So it's encouraging them. It's reminding them to remember the exam techniques that they've already developed and learned over the past 12 years of being in school.
Mm.
Things like don't forget to read through your paper properly first, answer the questions first that you know. One of the other things that is going to be vitally important here is getting enough sleep because what I've noticed is these two papers are very close together. They write one paper, they've got one day off in between, they write the next paper. The temptation is going to be very big, I think, to pull an all-nighter, to study through the night, to make sure that they can get as much information in there as possible. But we do know that it is only when we sleep that information is converted from our short-term memory into our long-term memory. So if I'm not sleeping, I'm not going to remember everything that I've been studying. So that for me was a big thing that stood out when I saw how these papers were scheduled.
Vanessa, I just want to conclude as the investigation is still ongoing and obviously not enough information can be divulged at this point in time. Those concerned about possible security breaches for the rewritten exams that are set to take place come the 15th and 17th of December. I mean, with the department trying to reestablish credibility and also, reinstall the integrity of the examination process. How do we balance that going in as well for the matriculants at large?
I think in terms of that, you're right. I don't really know what measures have been put in place either, but I think what they would need to do is the department needs to come in there in terms of reassuring these learners, in terms of reassuring their families as well, just giving them some sense of security going into this, that they know that they're not doing this once again for nothing. So, to my mind, that reassurance really needs to come from the Department of Education.